Welcome back into another episode of Mindset Monday with me, Matt, where I share with you things that have helped me over the last 12 years rebuild my marriage, my relationships, become a better professional, and a better father. Every week, I try to hit a topic, something that was relevant to me that I think is interesting, something I think could help you too, some things I wish I had heard at an earlier stage in my life. In a lot of ways, these episodes represent advice that I wish I could have heard at a certain time in my life, in my late 20s, when I was getting sober and I was rebuilding my marriage and I was trying to be a better dad and I was trying to be a better man. There wasn't a whole lot out there at the time. Podcasting content's much more prevalent now. But even then, I think it's sort of split. I think that you get some messages that are amazing. I think you get some messages that are not so amazing. And so this is my version of what I consider to be a solid message. Is it amazing? No, because I'm not amazing. Is it terrible? No, because I'm not terrible. It's somewhere in between, I think. Like I've always said, I was a tick above average, just barely above average. And that's kind of where I like to stick things. I'll let you be the judge of that. But I want to talk about what it means to be a good dad. I've talked about what it means to be a good man, how to be sober, and what I think a good husband is. But when it comes to fatherhood, it's kind of complicated. It's a little complicated. I think we all have ideas about what it means to be a good dad, to be present in your children's lives, to be present, meaning that you're there. You're simply there. You show up when it matters. You show up for the birthday parties. Maybe you take them to school. Maybe you pick them up. You show up at their games and their concerts or whatever it might be. And you're present, right? And I think it kind of gets muddy after that. It kind of gets foggy. I think when it comes to motherhood, you could hear any woman, pick any woman with children, and they can tell you everything it means to be a mother. And I think when it comes to dads, maybe 1 in 5 has a really good idea of what it means to be an involved father. I think as men, we have this idea of what it means to be a good dad, and so much of it comes down to our earning power. It comes down to what we bring to the home. And I'm not saying that's not important, but I'm saying it needs to be deeper than that. Every week I come in here and I feel like I miss some really important parts. And I used to write newsletters, and my newsletters were like I'm writing it, right? So I can take all the time I need and I'm not presenting it. So it doesn't have to flow perfectly because I can go back and edit and do whatever else. But when it comes to my podcast, my brain goes all over the place and I do my best to stay on track, but I often fail short. I'll go back and listen to episodes sometimes and I'm like, I cannot believe we have a single listener, much less hundreds of thousands of them. It blows my mind. And thank you all for showing up. I can't thank you enough. It makes me want to be better every time I see people download episodes. But I'm going to read maybe a bit more than usual this week because I did write this because I wanted it to be good. This is something I really genuinely care about, and I want to get my thoughts out there in a succinct way so that you can go back and listen to this and it really matters. But as you're watching it, if you see me cutting down, I've got notes here, and I literally sat down and wrote every freaking word of this. So I'm going to reference those notes from time to time, but I think the overall product is going to be better when it comes to the content itself. I won't have as many good clips to post, and that's fine if I'm reading something, but that's really what I care about is that the message is here and the content is here. And truthfully, I've always preferred audio over video anyway. I love audio. If we could just make an audio podcast, I would. We only made a video podcast because that's kind of that's how people consume content. And if you want to be a relevant content creator at all, you have to make video. But I love something about audio and the theater of the mind and imagining these sort of vignettes in your mind about what the speaker is talking about as they're telling a story or describing something. And I think it just becomes that much more meaningful. I always learned much better when it came to audio than I did when it came to video. And so what I'm saying is sorry, but not sorry for reading. Okay. That's all. That's all. But I think, I've heard this come up several times in the community. I've received messages on it, and thank you all for giving us content, for giving us ideas, for things to discuss and trusting us. Like, I can't tell you how much we appreciate that you guys would trust us with such an important topic in your lives, especially when it comes to something like this, which is, what does it mean to be a good dad? What does it actually mean to be a good dad? It's a huge question, and I'm going to do my best to do this justice. But I think it's one of those phrases, good dad, that's thrown around all the time. I think if you were to ask what it means to a mother, what does it mean to be a good mother, she could run you through 10,000 things about what it requires to hold that title, right? It's a really high bar. But for guys, showing up and being present's part of it. And then it kind of gets muddy and we kind of lose sight of what it really means to be a good dad. And everyone's got their opinions on it. so much of it is tied to your ability to provide, and providing is important to some degree. But it's not all there is. And I think that was a standard for so long. And we haven't really come to terms as a whole, as a collective, as a culture and a society to decide this is what should be expected of dads. This is what should be expected of men. Here's the things that we can expect from men. Manhood has evolved and fatherhood has evolved quite a bit. And I feel like there's been so much divisive messaging on what it means, where you've got one side fighting the progress, you've got another side lauding the progress, and no one in between the two whatsoever talking about how we marry those two with what currently is. And so today, that's what I want to do. I want to do my best to talk to you about the way I see it and what's really been beneficial to my life. All I really have is my experience and the experiences that I've been part of with other guys as they walk through and rebuild this stuff. And I've also got the unique experience of being a guy who has exposure and access to thousands and thousands and thousands of women. And thank you all so much for allowing me to be part of your lives. I can't tell you how much of a privilege I feel like that is, truly, to be one of the very few men that you would trust with some of the things that you discuss. And I don't mean anything inappropriate here by any means. I'm talking about just like real deep, good shit. And I get to be part of those conversations. And it's amazing to me that I get to do that. And I take that very, very seriously. So I want to do this justice. I want to do well here. And so let's talk a bit about what it means to be a good dad. And then we'll kind of walk through the structure of the episode and the narrative we've all heard and the highlight reels versus the real life. And then what I think where we need to improve, where we fall short, and some other fun detours off the highway. But being a good dad, it's one of those phrases that gets tossed around at like family gatherings. It's whispered in defense of a struggling marriage, but at least he's a good dad. That's what your friends will tell you. Maybe you've even whispered that to yourself, or that's clung to the fact that they are quote unquote good dad when the rest of your life is falling apart. And it really does sound comforting. It gives you hope. It sort of deflects from the harder truths. And sometimes we need that. Sometimes we need that positivity. It calms the fear of what happens when you take that title away. Let's talk about like a separation or custody split or something like that. And I think at the end of the day, it makes everyone feel like there's still something to celebrate. But here's the problem. When we lower the bar for what it means to be a good dad, we don't just ignore the worst parts of a man's behavior. We actually normalize them. And in some ways, you could argue we celebrate them. We hand out trophies for highlight reels, and we overlook the most important unseen work of fatherhood. And in the process, we've created sort of like these greeting card standards for dads that look great in pictures and they show up surface level, but they leave homes full of tension and they leave their wives to carry the weight, and kids absorbing the lessons about love and respect that will shape them for the rest of their lives. So today I want to ask some real questions. What does it truly mean to be a good dad? And why are we so quick to ignore the most critical part of fatherhood? And that's how a man treats the mother of those children. Because that more than anything else will determine whether he's raising kids who know what real love looks like or kids who spend their lives trying to recover from the absence of it. It's my contention here today that you cannot be a good dad if you are a bad husband and everything that entails. Right? So in that, I would argue that you cannot be an addict, someone who is addicted to a substance of any kind and exhibit those typical behaviors and also be a good dad. And I'm not trying to crush anyone's spirit in this episode. I am always doing my best to invite you to a conversation. Really, I am. I'm trying to challenge people in the most loving way possible to learn some of these lessons before I did. To learn now before it's too late. I really am, with love, trying my best to bring people into this conversation. I am not trying to exclude anybody. I'm not trying to beat people up. I'm not trying to increase shame for people. I'm trying to lift people up. But in order to do that, we have to have tough convos sometimes, because in order to do that, you have to deconstruct the narrative that you've created in your mind that you are a good dad and a drug addict or an alcoholic, because the two are not possible together. They are not. You cannot coexist. Simply cannot coexist. I also want to preface all of this before I get attacked by half the men that listen that oh, so women are just perfect. Don't hear what I didn't say, please. I didn't say that. This episode's not about that. This episode's about being a good dad. Maybe someday we'll have an episode and I have Paige on and we talk about things women need to improve on as a whole, right? We like to pick on men. Women aren't perfect. Never once have said that. I've never said that. And I will never state that, or I don't believe that. This episode's just not about that. So don't hear what I didn't say, okay? Maybe we'll do an episode about that at some point. Everyone's got problems. Everyone's got things to work on, right? This episode in particular is about being a good dad. So we're just going to stick to that. All right. Don't hear what I didn't say, please. All right. I hope you're geared and ready for this. First things first, thank you to SoberLink for being the sponsor of today's show. SoberLink is the world's greatest accountability device that happens to look like a breathalyzer. It's amazing. If you're as serious as you say you are, it's time to get skin in the game. We've all heard the promises that you've made. We've all heard that it's going to be different this time. Oh, I'm going to try this. I'm going to start working out, whatever it might be. Okay, my guess is it's probably not going to work unless there's some serious transparency and accountability. That's been my experience of watching others do it and doing it myself. SoberLink is a tool I kind of wish I had around, truly. Trust is lost in buckets and it's rebuilt in droplets. It takes a very long time to rebuild trust. It doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen with words. It happens with actions. SoberLink can keep you accountable and provide visibility in a way that no other device can. Accountability is important, not just for yourself, but for other people as well. When you get a SoberLink, you sign up people and you put them in your network and they get notified every time you use the device. And every single one of those uses of that device are a little drop back into that bucket of trust. Every single one of them. It's also accountability in some ways, because if they're getting notified, it's going to keep you from pulling over at the liquor store on the way home and drinking in your car. It's going to prevent you from sneaking around and lying or doing anything else. And it's going to push you toward getting to resources that are really going to help you, because not drinking is just a small part of it, right? Coping with stress and shame and anger and fear. That's really what alcohol provides. It's peace in light of those things. Well, if we can't use that anymore, then we're going to go crazy, right? And so it's going to keep you accountable in a couple of ways. Emotionally, in the sense that it will drive you toward resources that you understand at this point, oh shit, I need like help. And it's also just going to keep you from drinking, which is going to give your loved ones some peace of mind. They're done looking for bottles. They're sick of it. They don't want to fight with you. Aren't you tired of fighting over have you been drinking? Aren't you sick of that? Well, then take the fight off the table. Let SoberLink be the bad guy. That's fine. You've already volunteered to use it. You don't have to have those fights anymore. So in a lot of ways, it's a gift you give your loved ones. There's nothing like the gift of visibility in your life. And that's what it does. It gives visibility. You let people in your life, they get to see and track some things that you normally wouldn't volunteer because you're as serious as you say you are this time. I'm challenging you to try this, to get one of these things. And it's never been easier to do. Starting now, no more upfront costs. When you sign up for a 1-year plan, which I highly recommend, you can get the device for just $19 a month. For $19 a month, you can get this thing. And since you're an awesome listener of this show, go to soberlink.com/wheels and they're going to send you a $100 Visa gift card to help pay for that subscription plan. So no more excuses. You can't even claim cost anymore. All right. This is serious, guys. Like your fantasy football pot can wait. Get a SoberLink and they're going to help you pay for it. And they've made it easy with the rentals. If you're trying to rebuild your relationship, fast forward the process of rebuilding trust, get a SoberLink. Also, if you're in a position where you're just trying to keep your kids safe, SoberLink is there for you in those moments too. It's court admissible in all 50 states and in Canada, and it's considered the gold standard in courts. You can get these things written into your custody agreements. They've always been there for people in that realm, and they will continue to do that. Again, go to soberlink.com/wheels to learn more about the devices. And thanks to SoberLink for supporting the show. Support the companies that support our show. Like, they make this possible in so many ways. Hey, so does support from you guys. And if you're on the internet and you want to check out more about TUFO, go to twfo.com. You can learn more about us, what we do. You can find our free Facebook community for listeners. And with the Facebook community, you can also find our free Discord, because Facebook is getting rid of community chats for some reason. So we've recreated that community in Discord and given people another way to connect, which is really awesome. And these things are totally free. If you feel like you need more access to us or to other people who are really working the deal, check out Independently Strong. That's the program that we built with a licensed therapist that walks you through the process of getting to know yourself again, of reclaiming yourself again. It's going to walk you through things like how to set boundaries. It's going to give you a relationship evaluation so we can figure out what you're really dealing with. As we will discuss today, it's really easy to deflect and minimize how serious things can really be. We're going to hold your hand through it, but we're going to walk you through those really difficult truths. We're going to show you what self-care actually means, how to build a healthy self, how to, again, set boundaries, which is a really difficult one for a lot of people. We're going to help you establish what your values actually are and then boundaries based off of that. And Dr. Christopher Taylor, our clinical architect, is part of this course. He's a licensed therapist, walk you through some of this. And at the end of it, the question lingering in your mind is, should I stay or should I go? You're going to know the answer to that, but from a place of confidence and not fear anymore, which is huge. And so we're helping them reclaim their lives. No more discount coupon on that. We just lowered the price of the course. So you don't even worry about it. Just go to our website. You can find out more about it. While you're there, we've got recovery rocks. That's a recovery rock. It's got our logo on the front. On the back, it says, "Thank you for being my rock." This is a really cool way for guys like me to acknowledge the journey that their spouse has walked with them through recovery. If you're like a member of an Al-Anon community or something like that, you might get chips from that community, but that's not the same as it coming from your spouse and them acknowledging what you've done and the sacrifices that you've made. This is a cool way to acknowledge that journey. You can also get hats and stickers and shirts, and we're working on some new winter merch and some new t-shirts and things like that. That'll be up there soon. We've also got a link called Buy Me a Coffee, and you can just support the show monetarily if you want. Every time I turn around, there's a new expense of some kind to run the show. We appreciate everything, and so many of you have given, and thank you so freaking much. Like, I cannot thank you enough. But hey, if you haven't given, also thank you so freaking much just for being here, for giving us reason to keep going, because it's oftentimes your voices and your reminders that keep us moving down this path of having this show and making sure that it hits the air every week. So thank you all. We will not love you any less if you don't give us anything, but we do appreciate the support. We truly do. All right. I think I've covered everything. As always, if I forget, I will circle back to it. But I want to open the conversation by discussing the narrative that we've all heard. And the familiar line is, "At least he's a good dad." Like, how many times have you heard that thrown into a conversation about your husband or your partner, whoever, the father of your children? At least he's a good dad. As if that's some kind of consolation prize for the fact that they torment you, that they're abusive, that they're addicted to something, whatever it might be. That's sort of a consolation prize that we throw. And it's sort of unique to men in a lot of ways. I was thinking about this when I was writing all of this. I was like, do women hear that? At least she's a good mom. No, not really, because in a lot of ways, women's worth is derived from motherhood, right? And so like, they don't get the option of not being a good mom. It's a requirement to be a good mom. But for dads, in some ways, when we say, "At least he's a good dad," it almost makes it seem like it's an optional feature. Like, if you've got that, then you've got a good one, as opposed to being a bad dad. Holy shit. Like, it's an option. It seems like in that instance that we can be bad dads, like, and that's not like shunned totally, but there are a lot of deadbeat dads. There are. And I wanted to kind of understand the history of men and family systems. And so I started to do some research, and I started to go way, way back. And looking at our early ancestors and what role that men had. And before I get off topic, I just realized in my document, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that in a little bit. But for now, we're going to stick to this is why I write stuff down, y'all. This is why I write stuff down. But anyway, at least he's a good dad. And why is that something that we throw around? Why is that something that we say? I think it's so often repeated by wives and families, and even the man himself. I think one message underneath it all is hope. And that's that the hope that there's something here very important that is worth fighting for. Even if it's not perfect right now, it does give us hope that this person can be a good dad. Then that means a lot of other things as well, right? Because it is tough to be a good parent, period. Man, woman, doesn't matter. It's hard to do. And so it is important. And so I think if we hear that, it's like, ooh, well, if they're capable of that, they're capable of other amazing things as well. And so I think in some ways it gives us hope. That's why it's thrown around so much. I think in a lot of other ways, on the other hand, it also deflects. It's sort of like gratitude run wild, right? Like, you could have the worst day of your life and, well, hey, at least you're healthy. You could have just lost everything, but hey, at least you got your health. Like, yeah, that's true. But I've also been through something really, really difficult, right? And I think this is kind of one of those sayings that we give people as a way to comfort them. It's gratitude run wild. We ignore some of the most critical parts of being a whole man, and we quite literally ignore the worst qualities, and we only focus on the good. We're just focusing on the good things, the news we can find to deliver someone to make them happy as we try to cheer someone up who's going through it right now. I think there's also some fear underneath it too. I think in some ways we convince ourselves that they are a good dad, because if they don't have that, what's the point of any of this, right? And what kind of darkness could that lead them to? If you remove people's hope and strip them of it, what's the point? What's the point of life? What's the point of continuing? And so it gets kind of scary. And so we're more willing to kind of volunteer that, even if it's not 100% true. And I think it's also based on the fact that we just have very surface level visibility as to what a metric looks like to be a good dad. Like, what does it actually mean? And then we've created, I think, I called them greeting card standards. Like, I don't know about you guys, but when I'm running late for a kid's birthday party, it doesn't matter if it's like a nephew or a niece, or if it's like one of my kids' friends or whatever. Like, we stop by Target or Kroger and we'll go to the greeting card aisle, and you find these greeting cards that have such beautiful words inside of them. But how long do we spend actually picking them? 5 seconds? That one looks good. Throw it in the cart. We got 10 minutes. Let's go. Right. And we sort of take this really deep meaning that, hey, I saw you, I hear you, I believe in you, and these words represent the way I truly feel, when that's not exactly the truth. The fact of the matter is it's just a surface level offering because it's sort of a standard that you bring something to a party. And I think that's kind of how we've sort of bastardized this idea that you're a good dad. We want the world to see the amazing parts of our partners as well. Like, no one likes to think that they've married a loser. No one. That's like a new trend going on TikTok. It's funny. Our algorithm oftentimes happens to be female focused because Paige and I share the algorithm. So if she's on it and she starts to click and look at certain things, it'll feed me that same stuff when I'm on it. And then vice versa. Whenever she gets on it, sometimes it just shows a bunch of like sports content. And she's like, what the hell? It's the weirdest algorithm ever. But there's this new trend where it's like men or other women will be criticizing a woman who's like out by her pool. And they'll say like, you wouldn't have all that if not for your husband. And she just goes, duh, I didn't marry a fucking loser. That's the whole meme. And it's kind of funny. It's obviously joking and kind of throwing shade at the people who attack them for like, okay, whatever. But anyway, we like to show off the parts of our partners that make them worthwhile, to let people know that we make good decisions, that the person that we've decided to settle down with is worth it. They are a catch, if you will. You know what I mean? But I think in doing that, when we're doing that and it's not true, I think we're condoning in a lot of ways the behaviors that make it possible. We're condoning absence in the most crucial pieces of being a father and husband, and we're reinforcing bad qualities. Because when you like when Paige would tell me, you're just an amazing father, and when I would see it in the Facebook comments whenever she would post photos from Easter when I was hopelessly addicted to drugs and alcohol, oh, such a beautiful family, and look at him, he's there, as if it's like I shouldn't be or something. You know, it reinforces in me that, hey, I ain't so bad after all. When the fact of the matter is that I really needed some work. But we're condoning it. We're condoning this. And I understand why we're doing it. I just talked about why. But I think that the central question underneath all of this ought to be, what does it really mean to be a good dad? And why do we ignore the most important part, which is how he treats their mother? It's not talked about a lot. I know some content creators focus on this, and I love it. I want to see more of it. My contention is that you can't be a bad husband and be a good dad. I think we like to compartmentalize these things in a million different ways. But once we get into some of the family systems and the environments we create for our children, attachment theory, and all the different ways that we've looked at how parental setups influence children later in life and the kind of partners they end up choosing, I think you'll have to agree that you cannot be a shitty husband and a good dad. You just can't. You cannot. Maybe once we've split custody, this looks a little bit different because your roles have been compartmentalized. But when your job is to show up wholly for your partner and to be transparent and honest and emotionally available, you can't do those things and be addicted. You just can't. Fight me on it. You can't. Okay. So for everyone that wants to argue on this, and I've seen the arguments online, believe me, I have a feeling that I'm in for a couple after this comes out. I'm going to contend that you absolutely cannot be addicted to something, because everything that comes with that, the lying, the lack of discretion, the abuse that comes with that. And I don't just mean physical abuse. I mean emotional, verbal, financial abuse. These are not traits of a good husband. This is what you're modeling for your kids. This is what they see. This is the environment that they're growing up in. And the way that you treat their mother shows up in the way that she exhibits herself as well. They notice the interactions. Guys, kids are a lot smarter than you think. And they pick up on subtleties. And one day they will model their behaviors based on the things that you are doing right now. We're going to have hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers, a child psychotherapist on very soon to talk about the effects of addiction and abuse in homes and some of the more subtle ways that this shows up later in life when it comes to attachment and things like that. Guys, this stuff matters. It matters so much. Okay, let's talk about the highlight reel versus real life. Excuse me while I get some water here. Man, I coached baseball this morning, and I'm like a week off of the ablation procedure I had, and I did some basic, like, hey kids, do what I do when I was showing them how to prep step and things like that out in the infield, and like just doing some really basic, like old folks could do this stuff after surgery, physical requirement, and I am so sore. Freaking ridiculous, man. I feel like I'm an 80-year-old man sometimes. So if you see me like squirming and stuff, that's why. Also, we've changed our setup in here. We've got this new sign that we may or may not use, and it's out of frame right now, but I've had to move and orientate myself in a way that is rather uncomfortable. I'm kind of stuck in a corner right here, but I still think it looks pretty good. But anyway, I digressed. So what's a highlight reel dad? We were talking to a feminist creator. Her name's Abby Eckel on TikTok. Abby and Paige were talking about what it means to be a good dad versus what it means to be a good mom. And they both came to the conclusion that like dads get to do all the fun shit. And I think that that's true. I think it's hard to argue that a lot of dads just get to do the fun shit. Sports games, bedtime, photos, and fun outings. That is kind of what the world sees and says, "Aw, he's a good dad." When our kids were little, I remember this. I got two stories here. The first one was there was an Easter, our daughter's first Easter. She was just a little bitty. She was like 8 months old or 9 months old right before I went into rehab, and I was hopelessly addicted. And I was a mess, and I was never home, and we were completely broke. And I was ignoring everything that was going on in Paige's world as she was struggling with postpartum depression. There was no emotional or physical intimacy in our relationship. We were two people living on different planets in the same home. And in those Easter pictures, you would have never known. We were smiling. We were there. Everything was great. We looked like we were a healthy, happy family. And so did the world. Because it is so easy to show up and say, that's a good dad. That's all you really have to do. From a lot of standards, it's socially, do you appear to be a good dad? And that is like 80% of the battle right there. So if you can show up in some pictures, you're good to go. And as dads, like traditionally, it's been dads that do like the more fun stuff, like taking your kids hunting, like that rite of passage, taking them to their first baseball game, stuff like that. But what about taking two little kids to the grocery store? That's not fun. That's not sexy at all. What about making sure the baseball pants are clean, right? Moms against white baseball pants. Any of y'all out there? Yeah, making sure that you know where that stuff is. Making your kids lunches. And I know that some dads do this. Again, I'm not tearing up anybody. I'm just, don't look at the specifics, look at the whole conversation, engage with the conversation, not the little tiny points, okay? We can argue later. But anyway, I think that it's just so much easier for guys to be shown as good parents. But like, there's highlight reel dad, and then there's real life dad. And real life dad has a short temper. He's emotionally absent. He's rather immature. He lies. There's addiction. There's affairs. And we're saying that that guy's a good dad. That's the same guy, really? And so it's such a contradiction. And why does it exist? Here's why I think it exists. We have visibility bias. Visibility bias is a psychological term for when people give more weight to what they can see versus what they can't. In general, we give more weight to the things that we can observe, right? And less to the things that we can't. So it's the things that you can see. And what the world sees is generally what your wife puts on the internet. So you're a good dad. And then she has to hear it from other people. And then she starts to believe it even when it's not true. There's also cognitive dissonance. And we've talked about this term before. If you don't know what it means, it's sort of the mental tension that you have or that you feel whenever you have two conflicting beliefs. And we do this to ease the discomfort of the truth. And that's highlight real dad and real life dad are the same guy. We usually rationalize or downplay one side so that things feel less contradictory. Let's say that her husband loses his temper, he lies and he mistreats her, maybe even puts the family at risk, but he also shows up to the kids' games, bath time, or family outings. So when these two truths clash, how can he be both harmful and a good dad at the same time? That tension's painful to sit with. And so many women resolve it by leaning harder into the easier belief, which is at least he's a good dad. And it gives them relief even when that's not the whole truth. And so cognitive dissonance does play a role here. It's much less friction to believe the softer story than it is to look at the hard, difficult stuff because A, so much of that's out of your control. B, it's like you look at the options there and it's rather difficult, right? How can you make someone else change? You can't. Then you start thinking, oh, okay, are we one of those couples that needs to go to couples counseling? And how do I get him to engage with that? How do I make him care about family values and what I need as a person, as a partner? And it becomes a mess, right? The easier one is he's a good dad because he does these 5 things and we live with that. We also have selective memory. I was accused of this. Oh, wait, I was going to tell a story earlier. See what I do, man? Highlight real dad, the stuff. That's right. Okay. I remember the Easter, and then I remember going to the store with our daughter one time. We were shopping for Christmas shopping. And I was sober at this point, and I really was trying to be a good dad. And so I wanted to spend time with our daughter just to get to know her better, just to be around her, to be exposed to her, just to, experience her experiencing the world. That's my favorite thing as a parent, is watching them experience the world. It's amazing just being an observer in that. And so Paige likes Victoria's Secret pajamas. And so we went to Victoria's Secret, and I should have known better. But when I walked into that place, it was full of like 40s-ish women. And I was in there with a baby, and the amount of attention that I got and the ooh-ahs and, oh my God, you're such an amazing dad. And all I did was take my kid with me somewhere. This happened at the store, the grocery store, whenever I would take them places, and then people would smile and all the women would look. And it's like, that's all that's required for us, man. And so if you don't believe me, what does culture and society say about that? You've probably experienced it yourself. What about women though? Okay. I'm not saying it's not an aha gotcha. It's not, look, women are better than men. It's let's look at the difference in societal expectations on men versus women. That's all I'm just trying to highlight here. Okay, selective memory. Another one of the reasons that these contradictions, third time's a charm, contradictions exist. Selective memory is when we unconsciously hold onto certain memories and downplay or even block out others. Usually the ones that are just too painful. Maybe they're shameful, or maybe they're just rather inconvenient. It's not about intentionally lying. It's sort of like the brain's way of protecting itself and reinforcing the story that we want to believe. As Dr. Jake Porter said on our show, and I loved his quote, is that what happened to you is nowhere near as important as the story that you tell yourself about what happened to you. And it's the story that we tell ourselves. And selective memory helps frame and color that story that we tell ourselves. It's the story that we want to believe. And so in the good dad conversation, selective memory plays out like this. Families and wives highlight the good moments. Remember when he coached Little League? He never misses a school play. He takes them for ice cream every weekend. And then the bad moments get edited out. The yelling, the stonewalling, the coldness at home, the lying, the addiction, the nights that he disappeared or he was too drunk or high to help. The times when the account was empty because of their habit, the way that mom carried 90% of the real load. That stuff gets completely filtered out. It's also about narrative protection. And that's when someone holds on to a story, even if it's not fully true, kind of like encompassing all these things that we just talked about, because letting go of it would just be too painful. And it would mean too many scary and destabilizing things. It's a defense mechanism that protects the narrative that we want or that we need to believe about our lives. And in the good dad conversation, narrative protection sort of looks like this. A wife will say, well, at least he's a good dad, not because she fully believes it, but because admitting otherwise would unravel too much. he's not a good dad, what does that mean for the marriage, the kids, or the hope that he's clinging to? Family members echo the same thing because they want to keep the peace. It feels safer to protect the family's image than to face conflict. So oftentimes you'll hear this from your friends or from your in-laws or anyone else. As you're pouring your heart out about the pain that you're experiencing through addiction or anything else, they're going to be telling you, but they're such a good dad. And this is the kind of shit they mean. This is why they mean it. And even men do this. We internally do this too to protect the good dad narrative, because it's the last part of our identity that we can feel proud of. When the rest of our lives are falling apart, this is what we can fall back on and be extremely proud of, is that we're a good dad. My contention is that we're measuring it on some really, really basic and low-hanging fruit of criteria here. And so I want to reflect for a moment just through this first section. I have some prompts for you to consider as you're driving or exercising or working out or whatever, or walking or whatever you're doing when you listen to these shows. Is his praise based on surface involvement or deep leadership? Ask yourself that question. Is the praise that this person's receiving for being a good dad, is it surface level, or is it based on deep leadership and involvement? Number 2, do the kids feel safer when mom is around? It's a great question to ask. Do your children feel safer when mom is around? I'm going to do an episode very soon on safety and what it means to create emotional safety for the people around you, what it means to be safe, and how I mentioned in our last episode, like that above all is paramount to me. It's, do people feel safe with me? Do your children feel safer when mom is around? Do they feel safer to be themselves? You know how mom always gets a totally different version than dad does? Part of that's personality, because you do have different relationships with different people and people respond differently and consequences are different. But also, kids are usually like that because they're more comfortable. You know what I mean? They're more comfortable. It's like when you drop them off at school versus when they're at home. You'll hear things from their teachers. Oh my God, they're such a sweetheart. You're looking at them inside like, my kid? Dude, come home for one afternoon, right? Because they feel safe with you. They can be themselves with you. So who do they feel safer around? Do they feel safer when mom's around? Red flag. Do you defend him as a good dad even though you don't actually believe it? Ask yourself that question and sit with that pain for a minute. Sit with that. I know what it feels like. It feels like something just cracked in your chest and shattered a little bit. Do you defend them even if they don't deserve it? Next one is the highlight reel, hiding the real dysfunction. Guys, we see this all the time. All the time. People's social media lives are highlight reels, right? We like to put our best foot forward, but we're all people and we've all got skeletons. And it's usually the happiest looking people that have the darkest pasts, the darkest closets, and the most skeletons. Is the highlight reel hiding the dysfunction? Are we overcompensating? Many do. Many do. Now, the question, maybe if your kids are a bit older, you can ask the question, would your kids describe him as safe or just fun? Are you just the kind of dad that does the fun shit, or are you also safe? Man, I want to get to this for just a moment on safety without getting too sidetracked. How far are we into this? This is going to be a long one, is what it is. I think it's an important one. I want to cover it in depth. More than anything in the world, I wanted my kids to feel safe with me. I want them to feel safe, and I want them to be themselves around me. And the only way to do that is for my wife and I to work as a team to model what we expect as parents, and to, like, we're different people, right? Like, she's more high strung than I am. I'm a little more laid back, and that's personality differences. But do the kids feel safe equally with both of us? And the answer in our home is yes, they do. Now, are they maybe a bit more comfortable talking to one other than the other about certain things? Yeah, that could be gender related. That could be a lot of things, right? But for the most part, they feel safe. Like our daughter is going to talk to Paige a bit more about her relationship issues and things that are going on like that. She will. But she still talks to me about that kind of stuff. And that's like, it's an honor to when I hear that, I know from her, like, wow, she actually feels safe with me. But our kids will never let Paige teach them math either. Mom is not safe when it comes to math. During COVID, Paige homeschooled, and like our kids are traumatized when it comes to her teaching them. It's hilarious, some of the comments that get thrown around here about that year. That was a weird year for all of us, wasn't it? Man. But I wanted our kids to feel safe with me more than anything. I knew in order to do that, that had to come from an emotional place. They had to come from a consistency place. They had to see me acting the same over time, so they knew what to expect. as they kind of build in their mind the character of who you are, and they determine whether or not you're safe. It's how you respond. And some of it's like instinctual too. And I had to beat a lot of it out of myself. Like when I'm frustrated and like my nature is to snap, to be able to pause and to respond rather than just react, like, and doing that consistently, that breeds safety. And so I want to really get into conversation about safety soon, but I think it's just important to note there. So what are some of the core tenets of fatherhood? I mentioned earlier, before I almost got off track the first time, that I went and I looked at sort of how our earliest ancestors lived and what the role of men were in those systems. And then we kind of worked that through like the Middle Ages and then more modern times, and like how it's evolved. And I kid you not, like for the most part in most of human history, men's responsibility has been provision and protection. For most of history, a father's role was defined almost entirely by provision and protection. In the physical sense, like putting food on the table, keeping a roof over their heads, guarding the family from danger. And in the last century, especially post World War II, culture began to shift. Fathers were expected not just to provide financially, but also be present in the home. And today, I think the expectation has evolved once again. And it's not enough to just simply show up, which is more than our parents did a generation ago. And so I think that's what we measure it against. But it's so much more than that. It's more than just showing up or paying the bills. A good dad also provides emotional safety, being calm, consistent, and reliable so that your kids know that you're secure. And provision isn't just about money anymore either. It's the environment that you create with your presence, your words, and your actions. And that's not just financially, that's emotional safety, right? And I think that it's also about presence and participation, like being consistent, being dependable, and not just doing the fun shit, as we mentioned earlier. Like I think about everything that goes into running a household. And I sort of had to do this with myself. Like I've let you guys in my head for a minute. When I was getting sober, I was like, early sobriety requires a degree of selfishness that a lot of people are uncomfortable, but I think that it sort of requires it in a lot of ways. I wish I could have balanced it a bit more, but I know that a lot of that was required as I was having to figure out my own shit and how just to live between my 2 ears before I could really, really show up fully. But I was really taking note and taking stock of what my wife was doing on a daily basis, and not just like checking things off of a list, right? Laundry. So we have a little more transparency for you all since we're here. We have a setup where, so I work and I'm fortunate enough to earn enough that she doesn't have to work. So she handles, it's sort of traditional in that sense that she handles some of the primary domestic duties and I handle some of the primary provision duties, right? I earn, and then she handles the home stuff. But now those roles are so mixed because of the work that we do here with you guys that we're both working like full time. But I was taking stock of this early on, and I was trying to recognize like what goes into running this house and like really taking stock of this. And it was like, I would see her cooking dinner, but what does that really mean? She's cooking dinner, but how did we get here? At some point she had to plan what we were having for dinner. And in order for that shit to get here, she had to plan a grocery list. In order to plan a grocery list, she had to know what the kids liked and didn't like. You see how much this goes into it? Just that right there. And so I was taking stock of this. I was looking at like laundry and things like that. And I'm like how many dads like know what size shoes their kids wear, or what size pants that they're in right now, or what size shirts that they're in right now, right? Like what I was really trying to do was, if something were to happen to my wife, I wanted to be able to step in seamlessly and at least have a really good idea of what goes into this. And I really challenged myself to learn and understand what went into being a parent. Like in a lot of ways, Paige parented me. Like in a lot of ways, she showed me like what it was to be a parent. I always be grateful for her to that, but I also feel really guilty in the sense that she shouldn't have had to show me, like we should have been doing it together. It worked out, but I wish it would have been different. It just is what it is, I guess. I can't say too much more about that. There's some shame around it and I feel horrible, but at the same time, I'm glad we are where we are today. I think she would say it's probably worth it, even though it was really, really painful. And I acknowledge that fully. I do. But like things like ordering dance shoes, right? Our daughters in dance. Like, where do you even get that shit from? How do you size those things? Where do you even find out about like where do you start? right? Like what goes into that? And so I wanted to know enough about it without stepping on her toes that I could do something like that. Like where are the clean baseball pants, right? How does our washer and dryer work? How does laundry get done around here? Like all these different things. I think that these are some of the core tenets of fatherhood that need to be expanded upon, where we share in domestic duties. And it's not just because women need more help because things have become so much more difficult. Like the standard of being a good mom today is different than it was even 30 or 40 years ago that our parents had. It's different. It's evolved. Kids, dude, have you seen what kids like extracurriculars require these days? Have you seen the emails that come from the schools like every Friday and all the shit that you have to keep up with? It takes two, y'all. It takes two people. An evolved father is one that is present in all things, and can be there to share that mental load. When I mean share the mental load, what I mean is I'll come home and remind her, hey, did you see that email from the band director that they need new mouthpieces by next Wednesday? And she's like, oh, fuck, I forgot. I was busy dealing with this dance competition we have this weekend and trying to find a hotel for it. And it's like, okay, got it. Like, see how it takes two, right? It takes two people. Like, and that means everything to your spouse. So in that moment, not only are you being a good dad because you're involved, you're also being a good husband. And you're modeling that to your children. Our kids are in the room when they hear this crap. They know that dad's involved. For my kids, the standard will be different than the one that I had. And I am so thankful for that. I am so grateful for that. So well, I mentioned earlier, like, can you seamlessly step into a role? Like, that's a test. Like if mom was gone tomorrow, could you step into the role? And if you can't, I'm going to argue that you're not as good a dad as you think you are. End of story. And I know what some guys are going to say. Well, could she step into mine? Well, if she had the opportunity to go to your office and see what you do every day, I'm sure she could figure it out. I'm sure she could. I'm sure if she had to, Paige could figure my job out. She could, right? But she doesn't get to come to my office. I get to come to hers every day. We live in her office. So a bit different. Could they? Sure. Could they find a way to provide? Sure. Dude, women are scrappy. They figure stuff out. I promise you she could figure it out. But I think what more than anything, I think that one of the core tenets of fatherhood that's missing is this partnership with their mother. And that's respect. That's teamwork. That's modeling love. The most underrated aspect of fatherhood right there. Modeling love, modeling safety as a man. And these are minimums, y'all. This shit is not extra credit. Like I cringe and die a little bit every single time we get an email or a comment that says in reference to me that you're awesome. Like you're amazing. No, I'm not. I am not. I am living what I believe to be the bare standard. That's what I'm doing. I should not be exceptional. I should not be exceptional. If I am, we have a problem. The things that I do should be considered the standard. And that's the reason I want to have this conversation is that the respect that I show my wife, the admiration that I show my wife, the love that I show my wife, the care that I exhibit in our conversations and when I choose my words and my actions are every bit as important as coaching the baseball team. Every bit as important. And why the behavior toward their mother matters is so deep. But you cannot be a good dad if you're a bad husband. So let's talk about what being a good husband, I guess, means. And this is from me, right? I'm not a licensed therapist. God, I should start every episode with that. Like, we're not licensed therapists. Like, we're two people with thoughts and opinions with microphones. And I think that a lot of them are pretty good. That's my opinion. But by all means, expound upon these. If you have a therapist or if you know more about this, let me know. I would love to hear about it. I'm always down to learn. But this is what I think as I understand it now at the time of this writing. And I reserve the right to alter this list or change my mind, by the way. But I think that being a good husband means showing your wife respect in both words and in actions. And not just when things are good, but especially when shit gets hard. It's about partnership. It's sharing the mental and emotional and physical load of running a family instead of just dumping it all on her shoulders. It's about honesty. It's about transparency, even when that shit's uncomfortable. It's about humility to admit when you're wrong and make it right. It's creating an environment of emotional and physical safety so that she doesn't have to walk on effing eggshells in her own home and in her own marriage and around her children. It's about modeling intimacy that's deeper than just sex. This is about true closeness. This is about empathy. And this is about truly being present. And at the core, being a good husband means living in such a way that your kids learn what love and respect look like by watching the way that you treat their mother. This is where it starts. It's equally as important if you have boys or girls. We've got one of each. We were blessed with one of each. We decided at that point we were done, man. God, we got lucky. We got one boy, one girl. But for my son, he is learning what it means to be a husband from me first. I will always be his first example, regardless of what else he learns through TV or film or anything else. I want to be the loudest example in his life about what it means to be a good husband and a good man and a good father. And that starts with the way that I treat Paige, his mother. That starts with respect. That starts with caring about the things that she's saying, listening attentively, not tentatively, it's terrible. Attentively listening to her when she's talking, about caring about the things that in her interests, about listening truly and deeply. This is about having empathy whenever she's struggling. This is about being safe, someone she can feel safe with. It's so much about being someone's best friend and being loyal to that. That's what I'm modeling to him every single day. That's what I'm trying to model to him. Whenever we have arguments, understanding that like, I don't get to raise my voice and make a scene and throw shit everywhere. Like I am physically bigger than her. Okay. I could hurt her. When Paige gets mad, it's different than when I get mad. Like for every person that's like, yeah, well, it's not fair that like women get to like slap men and men can't hit back. Like, first of all, it's not okay to hit people. But if we're going to be honest about it, like if Paige hit me and I hit her back, is that fair? Fuck no. Right? And my son needs to know that. Like, we don't hit women. We don't hit anybody. We don't use our fists unless we're in defense of ourselves or someone we love. Period. I don't model that shit to my kids. I don't think you should either. You model respect. You model debate. You model respectful debate. Like I do all this stuff with my son. With my daughter, it's the same thing, but opposite. She's looking at me and I will be her first example of what a husband is. I will be the first example for the standard of a father. And I say it proudly that I cannot wait to meet the man that meets that standard. I can't wait to meet him because he will be worth it. He will be someone that I can trust my daughter with. Ask yourself that question right now. If you're a guy listening to this, would you trust your girl, your precious little girl, with you? With you done over? Would you trust him? Probably not. And that should hurt. That should hit you right in the gut. You should feel like you want to puke right now. But I think that's just the degree to which we need to change. We need to take it that seriously. Like, would you want your kids married to someone just like you? And that's physical, emotional safety. That's what we're talking about here. It's words, it's actions, it's body language, it's everything. And there's research on this too that backs this stuff up, guys. It's not just me saying your kids are going to model this. This is what attachment theory is based on. Kids form their internal working models of relationships from their parents. That's where it starts. That's where it starts for them. So how can you treat their mother poorly and consider yourself a good parent? Right? Parental modeling studies show that children either replicate or react against what they see. We do this in real lives. You probably have examples of this in your own life. As you're looking at your life and your philosophy on parenthood, some of it probably came straight from your parents because you loved it. Some of it is the exact opposite because you hated it. But either way, it came from them. It came from them. That's where it started, from mom and dad. That's where it starts. Kids from respectful homes report higher relationship satisfaction as adults as well. That's just a fact. They do. We have so much influence on our children. And so my contention, once again, that you can't be a bad husband and also be a good dad. I think it's backed by research. It's not just my opinion anymore. Like, we can see that this means something. This really means something. And I think it's sort of a way to look at it that's kind of, people really want to compartmentalize it too. They really do. They want to be able to look at the way they are with the children versus the way that they are with her. And I want to tell you that that's what a mask is. People can mask all kinds of behaviors, right? And at a certain age, you can really show up for children in a way that you can hide that real you underneath it. Like, highlight real dad shows through, but real dad will show up one day at a certain age. It will. Like, when they become teenagers, that shit will come out. when they start to challenge authority, when they start to talk back, when they start to really screw up. It's easy when they're little, but once they get a little bit bigger, that's when that shit shows up, and that's when it's the most important. Like when they're little bitty, yeah, early childhood development stuff matters, but like teenage boys need good, healthy male role models around too, or they're going to get into some shit. Because I was a teenage boy, you were a teenage boy, you remember what that was like, and teenage girls, the same thing. They need to know how to be treated. That you get to set that example, y'all. You get to set that example. And that comes from the way that you treat their mom. All right. Something I see all the time, and it kind of breaks my heart, is why so many women overlook this. Why this gets overlooked. Like we had a Wheatley that actually wrote this, and it was really profound because I had kind of, like it had been a thought that crossed my mind, but she articulated it so well, and she put it into words that really inspired this episode for why you can't, like why so many men hang on that as their reason for existing, yet it's completely based on falsities, that you're a good dad somehow, but you're a terrible husband. And why it gets overlooked. I think part of it is that you're in survival mode and that you're clinging to just positives. You're clinging to positives to cope with life. That's a huge part of it. Also fear is that if they're not a good dad, like what does that mean for stability of the home and for them, If you take that from them, what else do you have? And then you've got social reinforcement. You've got their friends, your family echoing, oh, he's so good with the kids. He's so good. Yeah, it's easy to be good with a 4-year-old, but what about when they're 14, right? And they come in and they bow up to you and they want to fight you. How are you going to respond then? How are you going to respond when they disrespect their mother? Well, where do you think they learned that shit? Some of it's just kids, but some of it's also because they've seen you do it. Lying is okay because you modeled it. Like in a lot of ways, I blame myself for the way my children act because like, who'd they learn it from first? That shit came from me. Like some of it's just kids are going to be kids. They're going to push boundaries. They're going to try to find their own identity. But some of it comes from you. It starts with us. But I think that some of this, like why it gets overlooked, is it's hope and denial. It's easier to believe a half truth than it is a whole truth. It's easier. We talked about the cognitive dissonance, right? But I think overall, the overarching theme here is that it makes sense to sort of validate your situation in a lot of ways. But in doing so, what we don't recognize is that we're lowering the standard for everyone whenever we do this. And we sort of enable it and we're sort of condoning the behavior. So the hard truths I have to deliver today: you cannot be an addict and also a good dad, period. You cannot mistreat the mother of your children and still be a good dad, period. You cannot lie, manipulate, or refuse to grow emotionally and still hold that title. And these are not opinions. These are non-negotiables. And I hope that we get to a point where we can start to all agree upon this, men and women alike, society, culture, that these are the things that we should be striving for. And so let's raise the standard. And if we were to raise the standard, what would that standard even look like? I've got some ideas about what it could look like. Are these definitive? No. These are just my thoughts at the time of this writing. I think integrity is incredibly important. This is just owning up when you mess up, right? This is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. This is doing the difficult thing, not the convenient thing. This is following through on what you say, whether it's a promise to your kids or it's a commitment to your wife. This is choosing honesty even when lying would be way easier and way less embarrassing. Living with integrity as a core value that you refuse to negotiate with. This is a huge part of what I've done in recovery. And it's inconvenient at times, man. I have a really difficult relationship in my life with somebody from my family, and my wife has an equally difficult time with them. I have actual like functional reasons why I have to communicate with this person sometimes. And every time I do, it causes, it's not an argument, but it causes some distress in our relationship because it looks like disloyalty, and some ways I would argue it kind of is, but I kind of have to communicate with them sometimes for really functional reasons. And every time it's easier to say, no, I didn't talk to them. That's the easy thing. With the real thing is to say, yeah, I did. I had a conversation. I had to have a phone call today about XYZ, whatever it was. And I have to see Paige get upset. And it'd be so much easier to lie. We even had a therapist at one point tell me, like, just don't tell her when you do. And I'm like, it's not one of my values. And I'm not going to bend on it. And I'm sorry that it's going to mean that we have more shit to work through because of it. But while I have to have these conversations, I'm going to be honest about them when I do. this comes down to recovery and stuff as well, about when I'm feeling a little squirrely or a little bit wonky, having integrity to know what needs to be done about that and to be honest about my emotions and my feelings. This is about anything in life, right? It's number one. I think it all starts here. It's just, can we be honest with ourselves? Can we do the right thing when no one's looking? I think respect is another one. It's just speaking to your wife with the same kindness that you expect your kids to use. One of my biggest triggers as a parent is when my children disrespect their mother. And that's not like an old fashioned, like, don't talk to your mother that way. You can't say that shit if you talk to their mother that way. The fact of our lives is that I don't talk to her that way. And you don't get to talk to her that way either. We are not going to disrespect mom. Mom's also going to do her best not to get overstimulated and disrespect them, but we model respect in our home. We model respect. I don't make jokes at her expense in front of them. I value her time. I value her input into this family. And I make sure that I recognize that and I say something so that when there's dinner on the table, it's not just taken for granted. Thank you so much for the meal. This is amazing. I know that you're stressed and there's a lot of stuff going on. We were wrestling kids around. I have no idea how you made this happen, but thank you. Thank you for our family. Well, when laundry gets done, same thing. And like, this is stuff that quote unquote is part of our job descriptions because that's our arrangement. Like, she also thanks me anytime a bill gets paid, she thanks me for it. It's funny because without her efforts, I couldn't do what I do. But it's just common respect and courtesy. That's what we model to our kids. And I think that as men, we have got to live up to the standard as being whole husbands and whole fathers to model respect. And this is also like, don't act like you're helping when you're parenting. Like, treating her as an equal is important. Like, I think it's what's the right term here? I think it's belittling when you act like you're helping when you're parenting. Like, that's your job, man. And I think you should need to start acting like it too. Like, and we need to stop rewarding, like, as communities, stop rewarding, like, I shouldn't say it was rewarding. No, I think when people do good things, say something good. But I think that we shouldn't look at it like they're going above and beyond when they're doing what should be required. I think you should always thank people when you appreciate something. But at the same time, I think we as a society need to raise the bar a little bit. Like, when you see me at the store with my kids, like, we can smile and nod at each other, but like, don't make a big scene. Like, oh my God, look at that. Look at him. Like, why are we doing that? Like, I know we want to see more of that, but at the same time, we're also kind of condoning it in some ways that's enough. And I just want it to be known that that's not enough, if that makes sense. How do we get there? I don't know. It's kind of tricky. All right. Consistency, I think, is another value, is showing up. It's not just like showing up at bedtime every night, but you need to do that. Do it when it's not convenient. Do everything when it's not convenient. That's when the shit really matters. It's like keeping the same standard, whether you're tired or you're hungry or you're stressed or you're sad or you're grieving, if you're in a good mood, if you're in a bad mood, but showing up no matter what. Same thing moms have to do every day. And I think that being predictable is huge, man. And that's important for relationships, like your marriage. That's important for children as well to see, is that you're predictable. Your family doesn't just have to wonder what version of you they're going to get on any given night. Being predictable and being consistent. And also emotional maturity. We talked about that in our last episode. This is very, very, very important. This is how you handle anger without yelling. This is how you, stonewalling someone. Or sulking around the house and acting like a little biatch because you got called out on something all night. Like, have some emotional maturity and model that stuff. It's really important, man. I think also, to add on to that, apologizing is hugely important, and repairing instead of just doubling down on pride or just like time passed as an apology, just not apologizing. You sort of just like let it go and you sweep it under the rug without acknowledging what you've done and like saying the words out loud. I'm sorry for XYZ. Like, model that shit. I think that that's huge. And that's part of emotional maturity. And I think that listening without getting defensive is massive too. Listening to feedback is hard for a lot of people because what they hear that comes from childhood a lot of times is like, shame, you're not good enough. But I think that we can learn so much if we can learn to listen without being defensive and just listening from a critical point of view. Like, if pretend that you're a camera above the room and you're watching a character that happens to be you, what does the character do next with this information they're getting? As they're hearing this feedback, take something and do something positive with it. Like, even when it stings, like listen to it without getting defensive. That's hugely important. And all of these things are to create safety. And that's ultimately what we want. I think that should be the standard. And I think as a vision, something I like to remind myself of, something that pops in my head a lot is Like, I want to be the voice in my children's heads when they're lost or scared. And I want them to have a catalog of memories showing them how I handled that in their life. And I want to be that voice for my wife too, just like she is for me. That's what I aim to do, is for my children, anytime that they're going through something, is to have an example, at least one in their lives where they can remember, how would dad handle this? I want to be that example. And the only way to do that is by showing up fully, not just showing up to baseball practice, not just showing up to the concert, not just showing up, not just like playing with them in the backyard, but like, how does dad handle stress? How did dad handle stress that night whenever he was doing the dishes and helping mom after a long day of work, and like something broke, or like the AC started to go out? Like, how did he handle that? Like, that's how they're going to learn how to handle things. The way that you talk to their mother when there's a disagreement, that's how they're going to learn to handle things. Like, I want my kids so badly. I want to be so good at this that I can be an example for them at some point later in life when they have a memory of how to handle an event. That's what I'm after. And so I'm challenging you guys to do that very thing. I want you to stop hiding behind this highlight reel idea of what a man is. And I also want women to stop lowering the bar just to survive. And so let's close it out, because we're hour 10 in. I still have to edit this thing. And I got to volunteer tonight. I got to get my move on here. What time we got? Oh, I got time. We're good. We're good. Disregard everything I just said. We're going to take our time here. Some of you like the longer episodes, and I'm glad, because I ramble. I like the longer episodes too. But I think that many men have their entire identity wrapped up around being a good dad. And that's not a bad thing. But I think you should also have part of your identity wrapped up around being a good husband and a good friend as well. It's not just about being a good dad. I know for some of you, you're listening to this on the outside of a relationship, and you no longer have the opportunity to show your children what it's like to be a good husband because you're living in separate homes. And I feel for you, and I have tons of empathy and love for you. But I don't think that that's the end of it. I don't think it stops there. As we will get into here shortly, I'll tell you how you can continue to find purpose, even if some of those opportunities are not as frequent. Danced around that as carefully as I could. I think that you shouldn't just be fighting to be a good dad. You should be fighting to be a good man. That's ultimately like what I set out to do whenever I got sober and rebuilt my life. And like the person that you see today, like if you like what you see, like that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to become a better man, a well-rounded man. And that starts with being a good husband and carries into being a good father as well. Like the two are so closely related. We've got to stop separating them, because you can't do one without the other. You just can't. You can't. Again, even if you are a good dad and you're a really bad husband, eventually you will not be a good dad, because you will not have tools for your children at a certain level or a certain point in their lives when they're going to need advice on that kind of stuff. They're going to need you to show them and exhibit and like display what those behaviors look like, because you're not going to know either, because you were shit at it. So start today. It's really important. I think for women, I think the fear there's a huge fear here, and it's a real fear. I want to validate that is a real fear, that if he loses his great dad identity, then they'll have nothing left to live for. And the truth is that there are other things to live for. Integrity, marriage, maybe not this one, but possibly another one, growth, community, and ultimately yourself. I think for so many people, being a good dad feels like the most important thing in the world. And in a lot of ways it is. And I'm not here to crush anyone's identity. I'm not here to strip away the pride that you take in fatherhood, but I do want to challenge you, because if the only thing that you hang your hat on is being a good dad, if that's the entirety of your identity, you're building it on a shaky foundation. Likely if you're listening to this show and you're struggling with addiction, it's very shaky at best, because you're not a good husband. I'm going to go ahead and say it. The reality is that marriages end. Custody gets split. Kids grow up. So if your whole sense of worth is based on and tied to tucking your kids in at night or being at the Saturday ball game, what happens when those opportunities fade is that many men have nothing left to live for. And a lot of women go through this too. Like, this is empty nester syndrome, right? Like when your whole life has been around raising these children, and then suddenly you have to live with this person that, let's be honest, you don't really like. Like, your last 20 years can be kind of miserable. And we see this a lot. Like, there are a lot of listeners to this show that find themselves in that position where, like, the kids are out of the house, you've done your job, you've raised them, and now you have to deal with each other. And it's like, fuck, I don't really like you. You don't really like me. And then you have to question everything that you just did with those children. And it's like, well, what were we showing them? Holy shit, right? But I think it's important that you don't just fight to be a good dad. Fight to be a good man. Being a good man shows up everywhere. If you shoot for this is sort of an all-encompassing metric. If you shoot for this and you achieve this, you will have achieved the other two things as well. You will also be a good husband and you will also be a good dad. And so this isn't just like coaching. Like, let me tell you this. Coaching is so important to me. I get to coach baseball. I say I get to. It's a privilege. It really is. I love it. I love it because everything about being a good man is on display. You get to show people how to respond. You get to show them what respect looks like. You get to show them what honesty looks like. You get to take responsibility for your mistakes. You lead by example, and not just when the spotlight is on, but you grind every single day. And like, that's what I love the most about it. At some point, my son is going to outgrow me in my technical knowledge of the game that he plays. He will. But while I've got my chance, my favorite thing about being a coach is that I get to be around young men and exhibit what it means to be a good man. And I tell them and their parents that first day every single year. I talk about the importance that, like, while I'm out here with your child, it's not just to develop them as a ball player. It's every bit as much developing them to be a good man, a good husband, a good father, and a good member of their community. That's hugely important to me. And I have my own ways of going about that. I think the game that we play, baseball, actually, I've written about this. It teaches a lot of these things, and I love it for that. It models resilience and sportsmanship and all that stuff. So like, coaching is like the vehicle that I get to use. And you can do this whether you're in a relationship or not. You can coach your kids' team. You can coach a kid's team. My brother actually helped coach my son's team. He didn't have a kid on the team. My nephew's only 5, right? He was just doing it. He was doing it to help me, really. But in that time, he also got to exhibit, positive male role model behaviors onto these kids. And that's hugely important. Like, you still have more to live for. Being a good man is important. I think another like massive benefit of doing this is that, like, you just lay your head on the pillow at night and feel good about who you are. You get to feel good about every interaction that you have that day, whether it be with a customer, a coworker, whoever, the mailman, it doesn't matter. I think that in this world with so much heavy shit happening every single day, the bright spots really do stick out. And I sort of make it a point every single day to try to make someone's day in some way, shape, or form. I take it as a personal challenge every single day to show somebody that the world isn't as cold and dark as it appears. And that is being a good man. And so you don't have to be in a relationship to do that. That can be holding the door up for someone. That can be giving someone a spot in line. That can be helping someone with their groceries at the, like an elderly person at the grocery store. That can be helping someone push their car out of traffic. This can be picking up trash on the way into the grocery store. This is the stuff I do every single day, guys. And it's all encompassing. Like, I make it a game to myself every day. How good of a man can I be today? And I come up short every single day on perfection. I want to be clear about that. I'm never perfect about this, but so much of my purpose is wrapped up in how good of a man was I today. And it's not necessarily gendered. How good of a person was I today? That is so much of where my worth comes from. It's not just being a good dad, it's being a good person. And so I know that so many people stay in these relationships because they fear what their loved one might do when their ability to be a father every single weekend, sometimes it's split in custody, is taken from them. And they fear that, like, is this going to be the thing that drives them to the darkest of darkest places? And they take their own life or they hurt themselves. I just want to remind the guys that do listen and are willing to listen that your purpose isn't just in being a father. And it's so much deeper than that. And all the work that you get to do in those moments where you get to be a dad, there's so much practice that goes in before you get to have those moments. Like, that's game time. The practice is in the little things. It's picking up the trash on the way into the supermarket. It's saying thank you. It's being respectful in all of everything that you do, in every single one of your interactions. It's in the way you treat people. It's in the stuff that you read. It's in the journals that you write every night. All that shit is the preparation for the game. And the game is when you get the interaction with your children. That's the game. I think that it's so important that we model this stuff in every aspect of our lives. And that's where we ought to be deriving our worth from. And like, here's the thing I think the women listening is that I know that it's a very real fear for many of you that if you do separate and they lose that value that they get, you feel like you're crushing their spirit in some ways. I don't think that it should not be all on you that you are where you are, right? Just because you're the one that made the decision doesn't mean that you're the one that made You didn't, it's like so much of their decisions made that decision even on the table, right? So like you're not guilty, and I would hate for you to carry all the guilt for splitting up a family system. I would hate for you to carry the fear that like, oh my God, like what are they doing right now? Now that they have nothing to live for, they're going to completely go off the rails. I'm telling you, as a man, we have so much to live for. Like we are in a very interesting and opportunistic time for men where a handful select men in a community, in a small community, can make a huge difference on what it means for the next generation of men. Men are like, we're kind of in flux right now about what it means to be a man. Like roles of masculinity are being redefined in a lot of ways. And like the old traditions, they're not all bad, but they're evolving in a lot of ways. And so we're having to build upon them. And like, we get to be part of that. And if you're a male and you have breath in your lungs, like you have a responsibility to do that. And that's where our responsibility lies. It's not just to you, to our spouse, even our ex-spouse, even though we do have opportunities to make that stuff right and to show up and be good men. It's not just to our children, it's to our communities as well. It's to other people's children. It's to everyone that we interact with on a daily basis to prove to the world that it's not a cold, dark place and that we do have a purpose in this life and that we can make meaningful differences. That's the responsibility I take on every day. And I'm looking for men to help join me in that. I really am. As we grow and we do more things and more offerings, I would really like to develop a community of men that are working to be better men, not just recovery related, like not just a recovery group, but like really men that are working at being better men and like evolving and like what that means. But I think that fighting for your integrity, fighting for your marriage, if it still exists, is really important. Fighting for your own growth, like that's hugely important. Expand beyond what you've always known. So you don't just hand the same broken patterns down generation to generation to your children. Like fighting for your growth is just as important. Like as you fight for that, you're also handing it down to them. So like what I'm saying is that your entire identity isn't just dad. And if you happen to lose the opportunities to show what that looks like in the home that you've come to know because you've fucked it up so bad that you're now split, that's not the end of the road. It's just not. Like you've still got a community to mentor, to coach, to serve, to leave the world a little better than you found it, And I think that ultimately you've got to fight for yourself. But being a good dad isn't the finish line. I think that it's a really, really crucial part. But I think that more importantly, it ought to be tied to being a good husband as well. And so that concludes the conversation. That's about all I've got. I'm pretty exhausted on ideas here about things I wanted to cover. But I think that's it, right? I don't think that you can be a good dad and be a shitty husband. I don't think that you can lie and deceive and abuse in any number of ways, whether that's financial or physical or emotional. I don't think that you can lie and consider yourself a good husband. And therefore, if you're not a good husband, I don't think you can also consider yourself a good dad. I think it's a really half-assed way to look at good dad. I think that bar is so fucking low, it might be in hell. If that's what we're considering being a good dad, is that someone who plays with their kids. Guys, strangers can play with kids. Okay, that's creepy. What I meant to say was like if I'm out in the yard and the neighbors come over here, the neighbors' kids come over here to play with my kids, like I can go out and play with them. Does that make me a good dad? No, it just makes me a grown man playing with kids. That's not what being a good dad is about. It's in the little subtleties. It's in the really, really detailed things about what it is to run a household and how to show up and how to be respectful and how to handle your emotions, how to be honest and tell the truth. That shit. And all that what I just described is also how to be a good husband. Being a good husband equates to being a good dad. You can't have one without the other. So if you're walking around hanging your hat on, they're a good dad, telling you you're wrong. No, they're not, because they're not a good husband. It starts there. Be a good husband. In being a good husband, you will probably be a good dad just by accident. Much more effective than you were with this fake highlight reel version, right? You cannot be one without the other. They are hand in hand. The bar has to come up. And I think I present an attainable, but also much higher bar than we currently have. I think it could even be improved upon about what I'm doing. I think that I ought to be the bare minimum standard, guys. I am not excellent. I do not exhibit excellence by any means. I'm fucking average. You guys can at least be average. You can be average with me. Come be average with me. Listen in every week. Listen to our content. Follow along. You can be average too if you do some of the things I say. I promise you. It's not difficult, guys. Half of it's showing up and paying attention. It really is. And the rest of it's executing. And that's it. It's not that difficult, but it's not what we think it is. Being a good dad is not just playing outside with your kids, not just doing the fun shit with your kids. It is every bit as much about being a good partner. That is where kids really, if you want to have an impact on a child's life, be a good husband. That will impact them more than you could ever know. They're going to remember that shit way more than you playing catch with them, way more than you taking them to go school shopping, whatever it might be, right? That's the important shit. And I hope for any of you listening that you've gained a better understanding of that. And I hope for all the wheelies that are listening, all the women out there that are listening to this, I hope in some ways this was painful. I hope that this was a truth bomb. This is maybe something you needed to consider. You need to really think about as you're looking at the person that you are trusting your children with and the way that they treat you. And I hope that you stop compartmentalizing the way they treat you versus the way they treat your children. I do. I hope that it's all the same to you after this. And that's all I've got. So thanks for joining me, guys. Until next time, I'm Matt, and I'll see you. La 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 la.